Welcome back to the beachfront in Torremolinos on the Andalusian coast as the World Triathlon World Championship weekend continues. It all starts this Thursday. We've had the women's under-23 event already. Now it's time for the men to take centre stage as we move into the midday heat. And hopefully the action continues to hot up over the course of the next few hours. But it will take a lot to beat the grand finale we had of the women's under-23 World Championship just a few moments ago. Air temperature is around about 4 degrees warmer than it was when the women got underway earlier today, but water temperature still staying about that 19.3 degrees Celsius. Wetsuits will be required out there in the water. Alongside myself, Oliver Wilson, is of course former Olympian Gillian Sanders. Gillian, we've had a bit of time to reflect on what we've just seen, and more importantly take a bit of a breather from the action we had at the end of the women's under-23 champs. But the men's event today could throw up some really enticing characters, but there are two that are missing today. Simon Henseleit out with injury, and Connor Bentley as well, both former winners. He's going to be in the elite race, Connor Bentley, missing out on what will be the 1.5 kilometre swim, 2 laps out there in the water. As we show you now the bike circuit, 8 laps making up the 40 kilometre course. It's technical, it can be tight. There's an incline just towards that dead turn, top left-hand corner of your screen, before they weave their way all the way around and back down to the beachfront. And then it's just an out and back, 4 laps, making up 10 kilometres out there on the run. It's flat, it's fast, and hopefully it's going to be frantic, to say the least. But as I was saying, Gillian, the absence of Henseleit and Bentley means we're definitely going to have a new champion taking centre stage today. There are two that really stand out, aren't there, in this field?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say our number 1 and 2 ranked athletes, Dylan McCulloch of New Zealand, John Reed of the USA. They've both been in fantastic shape this year. I think, you know, those two athletes are going to be pretty hard to beat out there today.
Have we learned at least, though, that we can have plenty of surprises from what we've seen earlier with Horvath taking the women's under-23 World Championship? She was considered one of the top 30 athletes really in the field going into that today. Who are the ones that may be slightly further down that we should keep an eye on? I know the man with number 27 on the side of his swim cap is certainly one that we should be focusing on.
Yeah, Panagiotis Batadas, you know, he's shown some great results.
Yeah,
I think we're going to chat to Dylan McCulloch here.
Preparation's been, yeah, as good as I could have hoped for. Way High was about 3 weeks ago, and that went pretty well. My best WTCS performance yet. So, yeah, I feel like the form's good, but the competition here is really strong. It's a really strong field. So I know it's not going to be easy out there tomorrow. So, yeah, I'll just do my best and see what happens. Yeah, I think just the consistency in my training has really helped my performances over the last 12 months. I've been relatively injury-free. I had a bit of a hiccup with a stress fracture earlier in the year, but yeah, I've recovered fully since then and got to Paris, and ever since Paris I've kind of improved with my training and racing. So yeah, I feel like I'm as ready as can be for the race tomorrow. Paris was really motivating, especially coming away from that and seeing my teammate Hayden win a silver medal and being part of that. It was really special and gave me a lot of hunger for the next 4-year cycle towards LA, and especially we might even have Commonwealth Games, I'm not sure yet, so that would also be part of the plan hopefully. So yeah, if I can keep progressing the way I have been the last 12-18 months, then yeah, I can be really happy, I think.
Dylan McCulloch then wearing the number 1 today. Always target almost on the back, if you will, if you've got that number 1 on your swim cap and on your shoulder out there on the bike as well. And the New Zealand athlete is having a sensational season, a really good career for himself right now, ranked number 14 in the world coming into this one. There really is, as we touched on a moment ago, there's he and John Reed, 14th and 18th ranked in the world coming into today. And then there is no discredit to any of those other athletes, but there is a drop-off in terms of at least the world rankings, which gives us an inclination of the caliber that those two are competing at the moment this year compared to everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, they're racing at the very, very highest level on the World Triathlon Championship Series circuit. We do have some athletes a little bit further down as well, showing some great form. Henry Graf has had some really great World Cup results recently. We've got Gergely Kiss, who was second in 2022 at the Under-23 World Champs. He'll be hoping to go one better than that. David Quintero del Campo as well. So we've got a few World Cup winners who've been showing some great form recently. Yeah, so I wouldn't say it's a closed book with regards to Dylan McCulloch, John Reid. We saw what happened in the women's race. Under-23 racing can be unpredictable as well. So yeah, I think we're in for a very, very exciting men's event here today.
The last preparations being made down there by the waterfront, the almost never-ending task of sweeping away the sand from the blue carpet for the athletes to get prepared. And look, you touched on it, I think earlier on today, we were talking about the split that we saw left and right on those far sides of the waterfront in terms of where the top athletes are going to try and position themselves. The tides will obviously change. It has gone out a little bit, I think, from earlier this morning, so we can take a look at the start list and we'll see where these athletes are going to prefer to line themselves up on either side of the blue carpet down there on the beachfront. Some others to just keep an eye on. Giorgio Dobi, the Hungarian. The Hungarians are continuing to go stronger and stronger. Pangiatos Betados, as well, as we touched on a moment ago, is someone who could really throw his name into the equation as we move further down the starting list of this men's category. I mean, it's a sizable field. We had a strong field of 50 athletes for the women. There's a fair few more than that, although Baltetijus unable to start the Belgian today, which will knock one off the total tally. So around about 69 athletes getting ready on the start line for the men today. It's going to be a busy water, that's for sure, on this swim.
Yeah, it's a large start list, 70-odd men racing. And we did see with the women's race, there was a side of the beach that appeared to be a little bit more advantageous than the other. Whether that was the run down into the water or whether that was the reaction time of the athletes, it's difficult to tell. With such a long start line, if the starters, Saxon is on the one side of the beach, the athletes might not hear it as well. On the other side, it might react a little bit slower. So a lot of things to consider with regards to where to stand on the beach this morning. But yeah, it's going to be a busy time in the water. Thankfully, we've got quite a long distance from the beach to the first buoy, so that should spread things out a bit. But yeah, we should probably expect a little bit of congestion once we hit those turn buoys at the far end of the swim course.
Breeze just picking up on the ocean front as well from what we saw earlier today. Shouldn't provide too much of a problem. Some more than anything might be have some sort of impact as Dylan McCulloch just readies the goggles and the cap, gets ready to go.
Youth Olympic Games champion from 2018, Dylan McCulloch, and wearing the number 1 here today in the men's under-23 race. His last outing in the under-23 World Champs was in Abu Dhabi back in 2022 when he finished 26th. Last year elected to race in the elite category, obviously with an eye on Olympic qualification, finishing 21st there.
Getting himself to Paris 2024, big assist as well for Hayden Wild in that event to help Hayden get himself up into the medal positions in the end in Paris. It's a real teamwork makes the dream work sort of feel for New Zealand. So Dylan McCulloch will lead them out. John Reid, the American, expectation as he takes the start line for the 40th time in his career. 15th in Way High in the most recent World Triathlon Championship Series event for the American, and a win in Kalavivari as well in September gives him a really strong position coming into this. The Hungarian Gergely Kiss making his 51st appearance, 5th in the World Cup. In Tiziavaros, his best finish in a World Cup race this year in his career. Again, another one for him to just keep an eye out on, his last opportunity in the under-23 category to get himself on the podium and perhaps a victory. Hamish Riley, the first of the British athletes to make his way out onto the podium. Second at the under-23 European Sprint Championships, 6th overall in the European Sprint Championships this year. And we move into the athletes with the silver caps, the likes of the Canadian Beaulieu, the man who gets to make his first appearance at the under-23 World Championships, born in 2004, making us all feel very, very old indeed, the Canadian. Gabriel Terran Carvajal, born in 2001, should I say, the Ecuadorian athlete with his last chance at this sort of level. He's had a pretty decent year in terms of the American Cup appearances, and capping off his 2024 with perhaps a top 10 or maybe even a fight for the podium positions would be a fine way for the South American to see out his season. All of these athletes know that this is likely to be the last big event, really, of their 2024 for a little bit of R&R, rest and relaxation.
Looks like the men have done their homework watching the women's race. Most of our yellow higher ranked athletes electing that right-hand side of the beach. We head into the red caps, our 20th to 30th, 21st to 30th ranked athletes.
Bitados making his way out just a moment ago, the Greek. Certainly has been there and almost done that at this level, fourth in the Under-23 World Championships last year. You know, 2023 was really his career year. 2024 not quite providing the same sort of prowess for the Greek athlete. And those in the blue caps making their way out. Zalán Hobor, the Hungarian. A little look left and right. Where is the space down there? It's going to be tougher and tougher to work out where the athletes can go, I suppose, as they come out here, and we get all 69 or so of them up on the start line and ready to get roaring. Got to find a space of some sort. Vermin Abassi making his way out, and then the athletes ranked, at least in the starting order, 41 to 50, wearing those green caps, will take their spot. You've had all that time behind the curtain waiting to be announced and waiting to come out. You get to be one of the first athletes to go, and you have to stand there for a long time looking at what is to come, that water out in front of you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it is quite a long wait for these athletes with, you know, quite a lot of men on the start list here today. So just opportunity to just stay focused.
Not really got much room around you either for some of the stretching and to stay warm. Tucked in shoulder to shoulder.
Wetsuit swim here today, water temp of 19.3 degrees. So probably quite a nice temperature for these athletes in the water today, not too cold.
Yeah, there was a discussion coming into the weekend in Torremolinos that, you know, this was going to be a colder swim than some of these athletes have been maybe used to. I know the wetsuit's required, but it's not, as you mentioned there, it's just on the cusp of wetsuits being required, so it's probably going to feel very comfortable indeed, as opposed to any of the athletes that do prefer the cooler waters, or any of the athletes that struggle perhaps in those colder temperatures in the water, really affecting them.
I think our final few athletes now heading onto the pontoon. We've seen all the purple swim caps, that's 51 to 60, so it'll be our final few athletes heading on.
The Mexican athlete, Vladimir Gonzalez Melendez, getting the star treatment in front of the camera. Not interested at all in any of our team around them. All of these athletes just interested in getting out into that water. Held in their marks for the moment. The right-hand side favoured by the elites if you're looking towards the athletes from the water. I suppose you call it stage left if you're out there on that blue carpet waiting to go. The Hungarian Dobby perhaps wanting some space on this near side so he can try and carve his way through the water. The horn sounds, and the Under-23 Men's World Championship gets underway with a string of bodies just teaming their way into the water to get out on the 2 laps of what will make up a 1.5 kilometre swim. Although it's Olympic distance, this is still going to be fast and furious, particularly in these early stretches, as everyone will look to jostle for position and see who can get their nose out in front into clearer waters and find a bit of room and separation on a swim circuit that very much plays into the hands of those that are the faster, more nimble through the water. It's a not exactly tight turn around the buoys, so the faster swimmers can just glide around it when they get to that turning point. They're still going to be a bit of jostling further back in the melee around them.
Yeah, 40-odd seconds in, and you could already see there were a few arrowheads there starting to form. The athletes with their breakout speed, they'll swim really, really fast for the first, 50, 100 meters or so. Try and break out, get free of all the bodies around them. Much easier said than done when everyone around you is of a similar pace. But we can see, yeah, some distinctive arrowheads just starting to form. One of our athletes in the orange swim caps, I think those athletes are 61 to 70th ranked.
It could be Gustavo Di Canto down there, who is starting to make the early bit of separation. As you mentioned, those arrowheads start to form. It looks like a volley of arrows has been fired out into the water from that sort of position. Something from medieval times almost.
Yeah, slightly choppier than the women's race, but there's not a lot of white water, that type of thing, so still pretty favorable swimming conditions. There's no massive surf or chop out there today. But we are in the ocean, so I guess there's currents and things to contend, so it's not like swimming in a lake.
If it's easier going one way, it's harder going the other. Looks like it's a bit more of a struggle going out towards those turns right now. Try and get a look at that cap out in front, work out exactly who's leading the charge at the moment. Difficult to see as the head just starts to dip up and down.
Yeah, I did catch that blue swim cap, number 36 of Zelan Hobor. So we've got the orange swim cap, and we'll try and identify who that athlete is. And we've definitely got Zelan Hobor out there, the Hungarian. We know he's a phenomenal swimmer. Led out the front end of the swim in Rome at the World Cup there 2 weekends ago.
I think it could be the 66 of Philip Lisak. We'll try and get confirmation of that. There's a couple more just arriving on this outside. They may have a slightly cleaner run, if you will, when they get to this turn, just because those on the top of your screen, on that right-hand side of the group heading towards the buoy, might just have to come in a touch, and that's why there's going to be a bit more separation. Jules Rethel, the Frenchman, I think is wearing that blue cap closest to the screen, who is leading this group on the left-hand side, if you will, in the melee of bodies.
And you can see Dylan McCulloch there, number 1 ranked athlete, and Henry Graf as well, number 4 in the yellow swim cap as well, so they're right up there as well. They're
all coming together right at the wrong moment, if you will, as they start to make their way round, and those on the outside are going to have a slightly cleaner run through, although they'll be pushed fairly wide. You can see how busy it gets on the inside of that buoy. Bashed around slightly, a few just starting to lose their way slightly and heading towards one of the kayaks that tries to guide them back in, and look how much they're fighting for some sort of separation and to get back on course. Knocked off kilter just a touch, but it's the Frenchman who leads them out in front. Messeret has them through the second turn, although he's just been shoved out towards the outside. Far less separation than there was in the women's event earlier today, although we do have a group of around about 6 or 7. They're just starting to filter their way out in front ahead of the rest.
So 4 of these yellow swim buoys to navigate, to make a U-turn before they head back towards the beach. 2 laps of 750 meters. They'll do an Australian-style beach exit, and they will then head out onto their second lap of the swim.
Is that Panier, the Dutchman?
Yeah, that's number 28, the red swim cap of Yelt Panier. And I think we've also got the likes of Zelan Hobor of Hungary up there as well, number 36, wearing the blue.
Might have been a number 22, actually. I'm just wondering if that was Marcus Day, the British athlete. Try and get confirmations. To say it's so difficult with both the boats and the athletes bobbing around in that water.
Yeah, it could well be Marcus Day. He had a strong swim in Rome, swimming just actually on the feet of Zelan Hobor, so it could be a bit of a repeat of the swim in Rome with the two of them leading out the swim.
Yeah, a little role reversal for those two. The British athlete looks like he does have just the advantage over the field right now. Just squeezed himself on the inside slightly. And you see the trail of others, including McCulloch, just on the left side of that V of bodies making their way out, but the front three at least strung out with a bit of separation and time between them, and it all gets very busy back behind them. It certainly looks like it's easier to ride the waves in towards the beachfront as well for these athletes rather than going out in the water.
Yeah, it does look a bit smoother as they're heading back to shore. The swell just, you know, helping them swell on their backs now. Okay, so 3 of those athletes out front with some clear water, and then, like you said, Ollie, we've got swimmers about 4 abreast in the pack heading further back into the field.
Dude, how aggressive does it get when you're 4 abreast in that? Because you're all trying to stay on the feet of the athlete in front, so you're all squeezing in slightly.
Yeah, it can get really congested. I think it's, you know, quite bad further back in the field. You know, we've got some aerial shots there of those athletes rounding the buoys, and you could see how physical it was getting around those buoys. There's probably elements of those athletes who are further back in the field under a bit more pressure, so panicking to get around there as quickly as possible. There's a little bit more pressure on, so yeah, it does get quite congested and can get quite rough out there.
Bring the body armor just in case if you're going to be further back. No problems whatsoever for Marcus Day out in front, however.
Marcus Day, Zelan Hobor. Marcus Day, I think he unfortunately didn't finish that race in Rome 2 weeks ago. He had a puncture on the bike there.
Well, he looks very calm out there at the moment.
Yeah, 4th at the European Under-23 Sprint Champs, and has had a European Cup podium last year in 2023. Very strong swim biker. He'll be wanting to put the pressure on, particularly in this early part of the race. Try and get a gap out of the swim and onto the bike. Take probably a few men with him.
There's a lot of support and funding just in the British ranks in general for athletes on the bike and out there in the water. We see obviously the success that Team GB has at Olympics in those fields as individuals, while triathlon can kind of piggyback off that slightly, of course, and produce some strong swimmers. It's about getting it right on the run, of course. Never say never for Day. Could be his day today. Certainly going to get the chance to lead them out of the water. And he's done a really good job of avoiding the mess and carnage behind him right now.
Yeah, and I think the British Federation will be hoping for some younger athletes coming through in the men's, you know, only qualifying 2 men for the Paris Olympics. They didn't fulfill the 3-man quota, so they'll be hoping to fulfill that in LA. Marcus Day with a quick little glance. Just Zelan Hobor for company at the moment.
Just made sure, didn't he, that he went the right side of the railings. He was coming into the lap marker just slightly off kilter.
Yeah, so that must be Marcus Day, Zelan Hobor, Dylan McCulloch sitting in 3rd. So great first lap of the swim for Dylan McCulloch.
Henry Graf's done well to stay right up there towards the front, coming out of the water in 5th as well. The German wearing the number 4, Gergely Kiss, who we'd expect to be strong in the water, and Pangiatos Betados 13th and 14th respectively, about 11 or 12 seconds adrift of the rest. John Reed up there in 19th is still well in the fight for the moment, 15 seconds down. I mean, we saw earlier today that those sorts of times can be snapped up very quickly on the bike. Saw the women chase down a 40-second time difference between the chasing pack and the leaders in the space of about a lap and a half, 2 laps. So anything around 20 to 30 seconds out there on the bike for any of those that certainly fancy putting themselves in a position to be up at the front at the very end of this and give themselves a chance on the run. Certainly a success. You just don't want to be that far back and struggling maybe a minute or so back as you come out of the water. That might make things a little tougher and might give you fewer opportunities to work with others, I suppose, on the bike as well.
Yeah, and we saw David Cantera del Campo, one of the favorites from Spain. He was out of the water in just 8 seconds back. So he's a really strong runner. So keeping the local hopes afloat.
Nicholas Holmes has had a tough one. The American, who's second to last out of the water, 68th at the moment, will be frustrating for him. The man wearing the number 20 cap, along with Kazushi Chosuka of Japan, 58th out of the water. There are some big runners and riders down there that are struggling. Yin Jiang Ma of China as well, wearing the number 6. He's way back, 30 seconds adrift, but down in 46th. And the trouble is you get stuck in these groups jostling for position. It's harder and harder to work your way through the field because you end up fighting almost those around you, let alone fighting with those ahead of you. For the moment, Day just leading them through and back out to the boys again here on lap 2 of the swim. 2 laps of this, 8 laps to make up the 40 kilometers on the bike and 4 laps on the run to make up the 10 kilometers. We'll be halving those, of course, tomorrow with the Junior World Championships get underway. Sunday is the World Para Championships and the elite athletes begin their journey on Sunday. The women Sunday afternoon, the men on Monday afternoon, going into the early evening here in Torremolinos to wrap up what will be 5 days of, well, breakneck speed triathlon.
So our first 5 athletes just sitting on each other's feet there in a long line, and then we have quite a big group there, probably about 10 athletes.
Yeah, a throng of them. Just about to see the heads of those in the middle trying to jockey for position. Easier to be on the outside of those groups, I imagine, Gillian.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Sometimes you can have a really smooth swim and the people around you are swimming, you know, really nicely next to you. It depends from swim, and it differs from swim to swim. And then you have other swims which are a real struggle, and you just feel like you know, everything's not working. So, yeah, it all depends on the day. But, you know, these guys are probably in the best place. They've got clear water, these first 5 athletes sitting on each other's feet. You then got a bigger group. You probably don't want to be in that massive group kind of in the middle to back of the pack. That's where all the congestion is. There's some, you know, that looks about 6, 7 wide going around those boys, and that's where you can get into a little bit of trouble.
Well, Day leading McCulloch around the boys as they come through, and they are just stringing out a little bit more around these turns.
Yeah, you can see, you know, those athletes going around the boy now. There's 3 of them in a row, but they're swimming quite nicely next to each other. They're not impeding each other, so they'll know that there's no benefit in impeding the athlete next to you. You'll want to work together. It's much more beneficial for everyone around you. You don't want to lose the feet in front of you. So, yeah, it's further back in the field where probably, you know, the problems occur. You can see that was a shot of Dylan McCulloch there. I think he's just sitting, you know, in second. He's sitting in second now. Yeah,
second.
yeah.
The man wearing the number 1 cap, but certainly not out in front just yet.
So yeah, an ideal swim there for Dylan McCulloch. Don't think he could have put himself in a better spot than he is at the moment.
So much of the last 12 months or so stemmed from that 12th place finish in Sunderland, the World Triathlon Championship Series for McCulloch. Just gone from strength to strength, 21st at the World Championships last year in the elite category. And he wants to come back, and much like we saw with others like Kathy Ashar earlier today, come back and find that gold of the under-23 category and just make sure that his last attempt that he can hang that medal up around all the others that he has in the trophy cabinet.
He had that second in Miyazaki at the World Cup at the end of last year, and I think that really, you know, boosted his confidence. And then he's had a really, really strong year this year. Had that injury Yeah, which is interesting because he says he feels even stronger now heading into this race than what he was heading into Paris. So that's probably a little bit scary for his competitors, because he was in great shape there, finishing 19th in Paris, doing a lot of work on the bike and helping Hayden Wild to that silver medal for New Zealand.
See Zalan Hobor, Hungarian, wearing the number 36 cap. Going to be right up there with the leaders. He's dropped down to third for the moment, been overtaken by McCulloch. It's really much ifs and buts and much of a muchness in terms of 1, 2 and 3, because they're all going to come out of the water at pretty much the same time. Whatever a couple of seconds is made up in the water can be whipped away going through transition on the bike as these men come racing back towards the beachfront. You can just see the Hungarian making a push now off McCulloch and just getting out of his slipstream slightly in the water and look to get up alongside the athlete from New Zealand. That's exactly what the Hungarian's looking to do. Maybe get alongside the British athlete as well, Marcus Day, who leads them.
Yeah, maybe hoping for a little bit of a gap coming out of the water. Like we mentioned in the women's race, it's not an easy run out of the water up to transition. It's probably around 100 meters, maybe a little bit more, all on soft sand, and that can really, really sap your energy in your legs. So yeah, not an easy run. So they'll want to try and get out the water at the front and hit T1 in first place, so they can jump on their bikes and hopefully try and get a bit of a gap heading onto the bike. So yeah, very, very strung out. If you look at the front of the field versus the back end of the field, that's quite a vast distance, isn't it?
And they're almost only just coming round the final buoy at the very back of the field.
So Marcus Day of Great Britain heading back towards shore now. 17 minutes on the clock. So yeah, not the fastest swim, but you know, it is an ocean swim, there's swell.
Yeah, the choppiness has just continued from earlier this morning. It was actually a fair bit flatter than what we're seeing right now. It's not too terrible, touch the lack of white water almost anywhere except on the shoreline, but certainly still making it a tougher swim than some of the other venues that we have on the triathlon calendar, like Tisjavaros, that's obviously on fresh water, very flat fresh water at that. That trail just working its way back towards the beach, which is only a few meters away now. Day looks like he's going to be able to lead them out. How long will he be able to stay up at the front with the others? We'll find out. If he can get his foot down with the leaders on the bike, he could stick around for a fair bit of time. Arguably the favourite coming into this, Dylan McCulloch, though, in prime position himself to try and attack now the remainder of this under-23 World Championship, as they're going to come out of the water here with the Brit leading them.
Marcus Day is on the beach, a bit of a glance behind, having a look how many athletes are in close proximity.
McCulloch, Hobor, Docanto, Sorokin, Rethere, Cantero del Campo, Coltman, Gurgly Kiss and Pagiatos Pitados making up the top 10, 15 seconds separating those top 10 coming out of the water. Key really is how quickly they can get through transition. Day making his way down the blue carpet.
Bit of a gap there to Pavel Sorokin, independent neutral athlete. Jules Rethere of France as well, out of the water in 6th.
So a clean run then for these athletes, particularly for someone like Day, who's going to be in the almost the middle of the transition area. That can get very busy very quickly, so if he's out now and can get moving and grooving, he might avoid what's to come behind and not have any athletes getting in the way. It's fairly smooth then from the Brit, although a touch slow in getting everything on. He's going to come out third with Dylan McCulloch and Zalan Hobor making their way out in first and second. Hobor's going to lead them out with McCulloch and Day following in hot pursuit. Sorokin up there as well.
You can see the Spanish suit of David Quintero del Campo just dangling off that group as well. Bit of a gap to him. So these three are out and away.
Yeah, Del Campo had that excellent victory in Valencia earlier this year, in last month. Home soil. I always say that you can get probably just a little bit extra out of you competing on home soil, and Del Campo will certainly be hoping for that. So the leaders are off and out on the 40-kilometer bike.
Looks like Pavel Sorokin has joined them, our independent neutral athlete.
Gurgly Kiss wearing the number 5 up in 9th. Henry Graff, John Reed 14th and 15th, about 20 seconds off the leaders coming out of transition. Here are the positions and times after T1 just running across your screen as we keep our eye on the leaders and see if they're going to try and make a break, or if this is going to be a group that will be happy to be enveloped at some point, or even fairly early on this 40-kilometer bike ride.
Yeah, I don't think Dylan McCulloch will be hanging around for anyone, so he's certainly going to apply the pressure early on in the bike. And he's definitely got the capability of applying that pressure and staying away. We saw what he did in the Olympic Games. He's one of the best cyclists in triathlon racing at the moment.
Be a good test for Day to see how long and how much he can stay with McCulloch, and if those two can drive a pair together. Sorokin and Hobor just staying on the rear of those two as McCulloch leads them up the 20-meter or so ascent up towards the dead turn. Already there's a couple of athletes just getting right back with them, including
I think that's Jules Retteret and Quintero del Campo, the French and the Spanish athlete there. They'll be doing their best to try and get on the back of this group as quickly as possible. They know how dangerous Dylan McCulloch can be on the bike, so if they can really just work hard to try and get on this group, it'll save them a little bit of trouble later on in the bike.
Is that Sorokin just getting slightly behind the leading three as well, as he's having to push hard, I think, to try and stay with them. I think most people would have to push hard to stay with Dylan McCulloch out there on a bike.
Yeah,
yourself excluded, obviously. Yeah.
It looks like there was just a little bit of a gap that have formed to Sorokin on that technical section, so might struggle a little bit on those technical parts. Day taking up the lead there, doing his turn in the front.
Powerful athlete, isn't he, Day? He's got that size that makes you almost, you see a lot of slender and smaller triathletes that find success. Day's built, got that almost sprinter's body, if you will. It's got a lot of power in it, but it means that he and McCulloch should be able to generate plenty of RPM on those bikes and push a strong tempo from the get-go. And it'll be interesting to see what that split looks like when we get to the midway point, really, of this first lap on the bikes, which they are just going through now. Top four separated by a second. Bitados 5 seconds off the leading four, with Quintero del Campo as well in hot pursuit. Then Gurgly Kiss and Henry Graff 9 seconds behind. Pelayo, Gonzalez, Torres and Mitch Kolkman making up the top 10 seconds adrift. There's a sizable group coming with them, really. It's the top 12 that are separated by 11 seconds before a 6-second gap when you've got the likes of Sebastian Werner, John Reed, Ian Diena and Gustavo Del Canto and co around about 20 seconds off the leaders. So there's a few small packs with a few small gaps in between them all.
Yeah, and we can just see Panagiotis Bitados in the blue suit there, just rounding the corner. He was just at the bottom of the screen there. You can't see him in shot now, but he'll be really trying to apply the pressure to get on. We know he's also a pretty strong cyclist, and he's got David Quintero del Campo on his wheel as well. David Quintero del Campo obviously very dangerous come the run. So yeah, let's see if they're able to eat into this gap at the moment. Dylan McCulloch leading them around that technical part. See a gap there forming.
McCulloch and Day are pushing away from the Hungarian. Of course, Sorokin, our independent neutral athlete. Those two having to work hard once again just to grab the New Zealander and the British athlete and say, hey, we're going to try and stick with you guys, but we can't stick at that pace all the way round.
Yeah, and Gurgly Kiss just dangling off the back of David Cantero del Campo on the last time check. So he is one of our athletes who's actually previously medaled at the Under-23 World Champs with that second place back in 2022. Another of our athletes who has podiumed at this Under-23 World Championships in the field today is Hamish Riley of Great Britain. He's sitting back in 18th place at the last time check. 18 seconds, sorry, a little bit further than that, 28 seconds back.
Here is the chasing group. See Gurgly Kiss just lingering there towards the rear, the Hungarian.
Yeah, I think Mitch Coltman as well in that group, and we know he's pretty useful on the bike. Unfortunately, he crashed in Rome in the rain. He finished the race, got back on his bike and finished, but a bit further down than what he was probably hoping to.
To the naked eye, it looks like there's a little bit more room suddenly for the leading four.
Yeah, the last time check was 5 seconds, and it certainly does look like it has gone out. We'll have a look now when they go through transition.
That one of the bike ending, and ending with a great pace for the front four. McCulloch and Day setting the target to beat. Day will lead them through. McCulloch second, Sorokin and Hobart come in third and fourth. 7 seconds, a couple of extra seconds just made way as Pitados, Henry Graf, Cantero del Campo, they've fallen back into the group behind with Mitch Coltman, Andre Book as well, the Chinese athlete, Rethere as well in the mix of athletes, about 10 seconds adrift of the leaders. That finishes with Gurgly Kiss, and then you've got John Reed and co back there around about another 3 athletes of Sebastian Wernersen, John Reed and Jan Dina about 20 seconds away from the leaders.
Yeah, John Reed just sitting in that trio with Wernersen and Dina dangling about 10 odd seconds off the back of the chase group.
I suppose you would say 20 seconds can be made up very quickly. The trouble is that maybe a couple of the athletes that'd be really good at making up that pace are out in that front group of 4.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do have some powerhouses in that chase group. Panagiotis, Batatas, Mitch Coltman, really strong on the bike. Henry Graf as well. He's in great shape at the moment. They do have some firepower behind.
Yeah, Coltman, who took bronze last year in the Under-23 World Championships, wants to add to that podium position once again. Chase group, though, we've got to make sure they don't lose contact with those ahead. Only 7 seconds or so. There are a couple now just starting to make their way up onto the rear of the leading 4.
Yeah, we can see someone there in that chase group has just made a break for it. So
if it could be Pitados or maybe Henry Graf, the Greek or the German. We'll try and get confirmation of that. Pitados is back there in the main throng.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it might have been could have been Book of Chile or Graf of Germany. It's difficult to tell because whoever it was, I think that's now been chased down. But yeah, that gap is now pretty negligible. Looks like about maybe 2 or 3 seconds.
Whoever did make that push, it was all about bridging the gap, and that's exactly what they've done. They've encouraged others to come with them. They've closed down on the leading 4.
And just see our 2 Spanish athletes now having an opportunity to get their feet into their shoes properly. Obviously onto their bikes and really applying the pressure, trying to close that gap as quickly as possible. Feet weren't properly in the shoes, but now an opportunity with that lead group now in sight to get those feet into the shoes.
Jim, can you just explain how difficult that is when you're trying to compete and maintain a pace to stay with everyone, but there's something not quite right with your equipment and trying to time your moment to be able to realign that?
Yeah, it's something that, gets much better with practice, and you almost don't notice it. You can, ride with your feet on top of your shoes until you find an opportune moment to put them in. Yeah, it's just, I guess it's a skill, and it's something that an art over time that you master.
must feel good as well, though. Once you actually get them in position and actually back sorted, you can utilize the full power as opposed to any kind of pushing down.
Well, exactly. You can use the whole full pedal cycle. You can do the pulling up the whole cycle instead of just the pushing down. You know, the pushing down can be quite heavy on the quads, so it's great just having those feet properly in the shoes, and you can utilize that full pedal cycle. But you can see that group now. One group, about 10 athletes in that group now. We've got Marcus Day, Henry Graf, Dylan McCulloch, Hobo of Hungary, Sorokin, Bouk Batadas, Cantero del Campo, Coltman, Jules Retheret of France, and Pelayo Gonzalez Torres of Spain. So 2 of our Spanish athletes up there, which will make the local spectators happy.
And it'll certainly get the crowds out if they're up in contention towards the end of this race. We've been well supported this morning already here on the Andalusian coast, that's for sure, with plenty of people gathering on the beach, and you could see the number of people actually down at the start line even for the start of this under-23 men's world championship race, and there were still a few just heading towards the beach, so they're about to get underway, which is always superb to see. It's always great when the town or the venue for any of our races, World Cups, European Cups, African Cups, etc., really embraces it and the crowd get out to support them. It makes a difference, I suppose, for the athletes as well when they're trying to push.
Yeah, and I mean, it's tourism off-season now in the Costa del Sol, so it's great to have an event like this in Torremolinos, Andalusia. We just saw the trio of John Reed, Vernison, and Gurgly Kiss there. So they're sitting 20 seconds off the front at the moment.
Dina, I think, up with them as well. The German may just be around with those lot as they look to try and join in on the fun and games up at the front. Although there's not much fun and games being had, really. It's just a consistent pace that's been put down right now.
I think John Reed will probably be a little bit disappointed with his swim. These 3 just kind of dangling between the 2 groups. Really trying to apply the pressure.
Kiss just starting to drop back from those 2 as well, which will be frustration for him.
Yeah, sometimes when 2 groups join up together, you know, the pace does slow a little bit. So there is an opportunity, I suppose, if the pace has slowed in this group for the John Reed group to make up a bit of time. But having said that, these guys look like they're pretty strung out. The pace is pretty high. I don't think, you know, Dylan McCulloch, Mitch Coltman, I don't think they'll be hanging around.
There's enough. The Spanish athlete at the rear there, I think it might have been Del Campo, was just happy to sit up in the saddle and take on a bit of extra hydration, and all looked more like a Sunday afternoon sort of bike ride from the Spanish athlete there.
Yeah, we've also got Pelayo Gonzalez Torres. So he was 15th at the Junior World Champs last year. So this is his first outing in the under-23 category. Second at a European Cup this year in the elite category. So up-and-coming, talented Spanish athlete.
So at the end of lap 2, the first 11 go through, separated by a second. Mitch Coltman at the rear of that group. One to keep an eye on for sure this afternoon here in Torremolinos. Now Gonzalez Torres as well, wearing the number 47, right up there with the man, his fellow compatriot who wears the number 7, Cantero del Campo. And hot behind the front 11, John Reed, Gurgly Kiss, Sebastian Vernison. So it looks like the German has just been dropped off of that trio now. Dina dropping back to 19th in the end. He's 41 seconds adrift. There's about a 20-second gap or so between the Norwegian Vernison and Matthias Beaulieu, the Canadian.
Yeah, it's enough.
The next group that come through from about 15th place all the way back up to 25th, with Ben Cumberland just off the back of that.
Yeah, so these guys lost about 5 seconds on that gap. Still trying to really work hard together. See they're each taking a turn. Vernison rolling off. John Reed coming through. I think Gurgly Kiss maybe just struggling a little bit, so the work's being left to Vernison and Reed there.
You just wonder if Kiss, maybe with the struggles he's having, is almost anchoring them back slightly, which would certainly frustrate the American and the Norwegians, but fairly frankly, you're working hard and there's somebody that's just dragging you back and holding you back a little on these groups. As I say, we've seen in the past a number of conversations and certainly some steely glares when you get into these groups when somebody isn't doing the work. Thankfully, I think the microphones can't get close enough sometimes to be able to make out exactly what's being said, but
some choice language.
All is fair in love, war and triathlon, though, I feel.
Back with our chasers, Vernison driving the front of this trio, John Reed.
Kiss getting out of the seat there just to stay with them as they go up that hill. And I'll see the leaders coming back down the other way on the opposite side as this group make their way down to another one of these 90-degree turns, which I have to say it's been useful because the road is so wide. We haven't had to worry too much about the really intricate technicalities. That dead turn is about as close and as narrow as it gets. There's a couple of points as well where on the straights it filters into a single lane as opposed to the dual lanes that we have, but there's been no worry. It's only a really, I imagine, if there's a big throng of maybe 30 or 35 athletes that you'd have some trouble going around these 90-degree turns, but there's plenty of space at the moment.
Yeah, the roads are pretty wide, good surface. We just saw one of our Spanish athletes there trying to make a break off the front of that group. I'm not sure if that's Quintero del Campo or Gonzalez Torres. I do recall Gonzalez Torres in Huatulco. He was really aggressive on the bike. He made a breakaway heading into T2 with a bit of a gap. So
I think it was Pintados as well that was kind of going with him.
Yeah,
just to
it looked like it, yeah.
Keep him with. Won't please these three who are still hoping to get back onto the tail, but if that lead group keeps pushing, it gets harder and harder for these to start to rein them in.
Yeah, John Reed with a breakthrough season. That first place in Karlovy Vary, 15th at Way High World Triathlon Championship Series, coming into this race certainly as one of the favorites. So that trio will really be hoping to close the gap to these leaders. Only started triathlon in 2021, so really new to the sport as well. And I suppose a hope for the LA cycle heading into 2028 Olympics on home soil for him. He'll be eyeing that out, no doubt.
Yeah, I think the competition for positions in the American team is going to be very hot indeed over the next 4 years or so. Andre Book leading them through the last time split with Bitados up in second place, sticking with him. But as I say, it's just a 3-second gap between first and 11th. It's the 34-35 seconds that these three find themselves adrift of that lead group that is maybe more problematic and more intriguing right now in terms of how this race is starting to play out, because that gap just continues to go up by, well, it's 10 seconds since the end of lap 2 and the midpoint of the third lap of the bike, which is not pretty reading at all for the likes of Reed and co.
No, that gap's gone out even further.
Although if you're working in a 4-year Olympic cycle, then patience is a virtue, and maybe that's what's happening right now for the trio. Fortunately for them as well, there is a big group of athletes that have caught right up onto their tail, and they're going to be enveloped by the rest of the pack that runs all the way down to about 25th.
Yeah,
maybe easier as a large group, though, to work.
Yeah, I was just going to say they've been caught by that group. Matisse Bellew of Canada, one of our pre-race favorites. First under-23 world champs. He was on the podium at the World Junior Champs last year. He's in that group. Hamish Riley, Ben Cumberland, Yandina. Yeah, quite a sizable group. So from 12th through to 25th, athletes 12th through to 25th. Our chase group at the moment sitting around 35 odd seconds back of our leaders.
It's a good conditions today, isn't it, for some hard-nosed pushing out there on the bike. It's warm, but it's not going to be overbearing. The sun will get you a little bit in terms of the exposure, but as we touched on already, there's plenty of sheltered sections on this bike track that there's plenty of respite from, thanks to the trees and some of the hotels around there.
Yeah, and it's dry, you know, really great racing conditions. don't have to worry about slippery roads and that type of thing. We had a bit of rain the past few days here, so it's all dried out now. Roads are perfect condition. Sun's out. Yeah, it's not too hot. Might get a little bit steamy once they hit the run. And then we heard some of the ladies in their interviews. Zuzana Michilikova said she ate 4 or 5 gels on the bike. I guess with the early race start, maybe her breakfast wasn't big. That's a lot of gels to eat. So yeah, they'll be taking some electrolytes and gels on the bike.
Yeah, the perfect weather set to continue as well, by the way, for the rest of this weekend. There should be no complaints from any of the athletes about the conditions that they will be facing over the next few days here in Torremolinos as they come round to get set to go out onto lap 4 of this bike.
So yeah, Mitch Coltman leading them out. Marcus Day, Jules Retheret.
Seeing a rotation up at the front. Henry Graff has been in the mix, but Andre Book's been up on the front position along with Betados on a couple of occasions. Hobor still right in the cluster. McCulloch, who was right on the rear of that group, is now just lingering just ahead of Pavel Sorokin. As 36 seconds now the gap between 11th and 12th down there on track. So the gap is staying as it was. Same distance as when Wernerson and John Reed and Gurgley Kiss were leading the charge as a trio on their own, but James Corbett and co have been able to pull themselves back with that trio and then maintain at least the gap. We've seen though already today that 40 seconds can disappear very quickly in the second half of the bike if you're willing to put the work in.
Yeah, we saw in the women's race, they only really brought that down with around 3 laps to go on the bike, so things can change. Like we mentioned in the women's race a few times, if the motivation stays high in that chase group, you know, then there's all the opportunity for them to bring that gap down. It is a bigger group, which is sometimes also a little bit disadvantageous. This is probably a better sized group, this lead group of 10, 11 athletes. The bigger group, you know, sometimes a little bit difficult to chase down, but
encourage more people to come with you as well, haven't you, to help support the effort.
But it is, like you said, the course is quite wide, the roads are wide, so, you know, a bigger group doesn't make too much of a difference under those circumstances.
Yeah, it was interesting. We saw at the end of that women's event earlier today, Katia Shah was embraced, and there was a real appreciation by Maria Tomei for the work that Shah did to get Tomei up into contention. 40 seconds, it seems then, at least to the Portuguese athlete, was the difference between a podium and not being on the podium. And anybody in that group further back 40 seconds or so down the field will have probably recognised that from today's running of the women's event, and will realise that they probably do need to make a kick on at some point in the second half of this bike. Maybe try and attack this lead group a bit more and wind that gap into about 20 seconds or so.
Yeah, and that's perhaps what Dylan McCulloch is keeping in mind. You just saw him towards the rear of the group there. Maybe not necessary for him to be driving massively at the moment, but if that gap starts to come down, then you'll probably see him go to the front of the group to make sure, you know, that gap doesn't close even more. You can just see those chasers rounding the corner. You know, camera angle shots are quite deceiving, but you could just see them rounding the corner on the far part of that camera shot. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the time gap is. So it was 36 seconds at the last check. Yeah, I'd be very surprised if Dylan McCulloch didn't start to apply the pressure if that gap started to come down.
Getting towards that bike split out here on the course, a few signs being shown up towards the athletes on the side of the track by trainers and helpers in their camps. The first group goes through, down to 11th place. Packed in a comfortable, controlled line. Andre Book sitting off the rear. Still no sign yet of the rest of the pack. Now they come through around about 35, 32 seconds. Still off the chase. Ben Cumberland trying to push them through with John Reed, James Corbett and Sebastian Wernerson, the front four, who who are trying to lead the chase down onto the rear of that man there, Pelayo Gonzalez Torres, who is at the back of this leading group.
Yeah, so they've gained about 4 seconds on that part of the course. I mean, bear in mind that's a half lap, that time check. So let's see if they're able to eliminate some more of that deficit after this lap. I think they'll obviously draw confidence if they can get that gap, you know, below 30 seconds. Still got another 20 Ks left on the bike, don't we? So
yeah, 30 seconds at the midway point is certainly an attainable gap to be able to whittle down, and if it ends up being 4 seconds, say every half lap, it comes down very quickly suddenly.
Yeah.
It's amazing how things can change. You think 40 seconds down the line, oh, it's quite a big gap, it's not going to be great if it stays there, and it just takes one little attack, one push or so, and the mind's eye suddenly starts seeing it as well. They could be right on their tails when we get to the end of this bike run. Still just under 20 kilometers to go though out there as the chase group working hard to reel them in. There is spread out though as that front 11.
It's just, I think, Elg on the back of that group. Or it could be Fan of China, actually.
Can they see them down the road? Be tough to make them out, I think. I think the last bike just going round the corner further ahead.
Yeah, they might have just seen them go around the corner. Yes, psychologically, once you can see the motorbike that's with the lead pack, then you know that you're kind of getting there. It's the carrot being dangled.
No chance for distractions by the view if you're out there on one of the bikes, but certainly we can take in the beauty of the beach side here. A few holiday makers wondering perhaps what's going on with all the action around.
A few people in the pool there enjoying a swim. Beautiful autumn day on the Costa del Sol here. Fabulous weather after a few days of rain.
Yeah, rather envious of those in the pool right now. Get to enjoy perhaps a early afternoon beverage and a swim and still be able to take in the atmosphere as well that World Triathlon brings.
Tardis there on the front, driving them through after that lap. So it was 32 seconds at the last time check.
It's down to 30. Another couple of seconds just whittled away. Venison and Reed still the ones that are leading that group. They've been at the front since they were caught. Gogli Kiss as well. They're still trying to stay up there to the last of the trios. Just a couple of places further back, but only a second really on the timing sheet.
And the crowds are starting to build as well. Everyone now coming out to watch these athletes.
Maybe they've heard that there's a couple of Spanish athletes up in that leading group of 11 and they've decided to come out and give them a much needed boost. Is that just the lead group and the chase group that are able to see each other there just around a small corner section of the circuit?
Yeah, just one of those rare parts on the course where they're able to see.
That might have been one of the very rear groups, in fact. I just wonder if that was ahead of the very leaders, because there is that chase group of only 30 seconds back, but we're still waiting a very long time for the rest of the field to come through.
Yeah, it might have been.
This is one of the longer stretches that runs out. They weave round and will take eventually that uphill push up towards the dead turn.
Yeah, I think we mentioned earlier, bike course flat but quite technical. It takes in around 15 90-degree turns, so a lot of power spikes for these athletes. Might not be, you know, very hilly or anything. There's one gradual climb heading up to the dead turn, but apart from that, it's flat, it's technical, and yeah, lots of 90-degree turns to take in.
What did you prefer when racing? Did you like something that was more technical like this, but obviously it requires that up and down energy levels to drive your way back up to top speeds, or did you like something that was maybe a bit more flowing, but you had a bit more kind of hill climbs and
I preferred flat and technical. I think it just, speaks to, I guess, the strength of the athletes. A lot of athletes are all-round strong, but there are certain athletes who are very strong on hilly courses. They're just, power-to-weight ratio is exceptional. I preferred a flat technical course. So, triathletes are versatile, and they need to be strong on all different types of courses.
Yeah, definitely versatile, that's for sure. In terms of you're already doing 3 sports that most people were focusing on just one. As we were discussing earlier with Michalikova, who ended up finishing second earlier today in the Women's Under-23 Championship. There's a number of these athletes that will have a few other sports just in the back pocket, and they'll do either for work or pleasure.
Yeah, and we had Way High, the World Triathlon Championship Series, and that was extremely hilly, challenging course. So, yeah, there's some, it's nice to have a bit of variation. Talking about athletes with other sports, Dylan McCulloch is one of those, having cycled professionally as well. And just hear one of the coaches shouting there, 30 seconds.
Yeah, they come through the bike split. The leaders already through. 51.01. David Cantero del Campo going through that split.
And this was really the point in the women's race where that time gap started to come down. It was actually, I would say, very similar situation and very similar time gap.
See if the same story plays out. Still 30 seconds. Nothing changing just yet. It was probably around about the, that midpoint of the 4th or 5th lap, excuse me, that, we saw that push. Hasn't quite come just yet, though, from Berlioz, the Canadian, and co. That's the credit as well, though, to the 11 out in front.
Yeah, we're just receiving some news. Number 51 and number 34 have been disqualified for cutting the swim buoy. Number 34 is Yale Vladimir Gonzalez Menladez of Mexico, and number 51 is Ujola Kovac of Hungary. Number 3 and number 19 have 15-second time penalties for swim behavior. That is Junje Fan of China and Gergo Dobby of Hungary. They're just an update from out on the course. So they'll serve that 15-second penalty on the run. They can choose which lap of the run to serve that penalty. There's a penalty box located close to transition. They'll have the athlete's number on it, and they'll need to stop and serve that 15-second penalty.
That's going to frustrate Junji Fan, who came in here with high hopes of leading the Chinese contingent out here. 3rd in Wuhan in the Asia Cup earlier this year, 1st in the Asian Sprint Championships, Chinese National Championship bronze in 2023. That's certainly going to slow him down, though, a 15-second penalty. Swim behaviour. It sounds like being reprimanded at school, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive field of men, 70 athletes, so yeah, it is a difficult one.
How you pick out as well, Gergo Dobby and Junji Fan from the group there as being the ones that are acting out.
I think the officials, they're on the boats out there, they have, camera equipment and that type of thing, and the athletes do have the right to appeal those if they think that they have been mistakenly identified.
They're going to have 15 seconds to pause and appeal it, I'm sure, in the start of the run or wherever they choose to take those penalties. A few more dropping out. Gabriel Santos, the Portuguese athlete, unfortunately dropping away from the field, going to be a DNF. Oscar Lilja of Sweden, DNF, and also the Gabriel Terren Carvajal, the Ecuadorian, he's not going to be able to finish today. Finally as well, getting word that Thomas Windeschuber, the Austrian, will also be a DNF today.
It's our lead group of athletes just coming through. So 11 of our athletes in this lead group. We've got 2 Spanish athletes in there, Peleo Gonzalez Torres, David Quintero del Campo. We've got Hobo of Hungary, Jules Rithre of France, Henry Graf of Germany, Marcus Day of Great Britain, Dylan McCulloch of New Zealand, Mitch Coltman of the Netherlands, Panagiotis Batadas of Greece, Pavel Sorokin representing the independent neutral athletes, and Andre Buk of Chile.
The gap's come down by about 5 seconds or so.
Yeah, they're just eating into it, you know, a few seconds, aren't they?
Bite-sized portions, if you will.
Yeah. 3 laps to go. They are running out of time, but it is, you know, it's still doable, 27 odd seconds.
And we did say that 20 seconds wouldn't be the worst time gap to have if you're going out on the run, if you back yourself on the run and consider yourself a powerful runner, to be able to make up some of the numbers. Again, the problem is that there's quite a few powerful athletes further ahead in that group 20 seconds further down the road that will make life a little more difficult for you, but it's not unattainable.
Yeah, Matisse Ballou, John Reed, they're sitting in that chase group 27, 28 seconds back. We know they're strong runners. Gurgly Kiss as well. You know, they're the athletes who really want that time gap to come down, give themselves a shot at the podium. Just makes life a little bit difficult if you give your competitors, you know, 20 odd seconds leading into the run. So this looks like the pace has dropped a little bit in this lead group. These athletes having a little bit of a look around, which is a little bit dangerous. Gives the opportunity for the chasers to close that gap. Don't see the group coming through on that overhead shot at the moment. There we can just see them coming through now.
Yeah, it's the important sighter. At least that leading group hasn't raced off on that left-hand turn and moved away from this dead turn that they go up the hill to and then back down again before it wheels away to the left. And yeah, you get that chance just to get a closer view of the enemy in front. Lap 6 then of 8. 2.5 laps or so remaining here on the bike. 40 kilometers just being churned up by those down there, but the lead 11 look very comfortable right now, albeit slightly strung out. Chase group in a similar fashion. There are some that are working really hard to stay on the back of that chase group right now.
Yeah, I think Vernison Reed doing a lot of work in that chase group. Back with our leaders here.
Another rotation up at the front.
Yeah, they'll know that that gap's come down 27 seconds, and so these leaders know it's starting to reach danger territory. They need to keep motivated. They need to, you know, not look around. They need to work together.
Yeah, Sorokin just off the back of that, still staying with them. 3 seconds drift of the leader. It's just the length of the train, really, that they've created for themselves. Ressoré, the Frenchman, the one leading them through the last bike split. 20 seconds now, the gap's come down to Vernison, Cumberland, Reed, Ruetas, Corbett, Nelg. They're starting to do the job suddenly. Another 4 or 5 seconds out, the last split. If they do that for the next 4 or so, towards the end of this bike, well, they'll be right, all going in as a group together, which won't necessarily be what those at the front will have wanted.
No, that puts the likes of Matisse Ballou, really strong runner, right back in contention, and puts John Reed right back in contention, Gurgly Kiss as well. Those are all real danger athletes come the run.
Question now is there a response from those at the front? There'll definitely be somebody with an indicator once they get down onto the seafront, down onto the final straight of this 6th lap. Just need a big sign that says underlay, underlay, I think. Get moving.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to swell the group to around 25 athletes. There's 11 of them in the lead group at the moment.
And that, again, for those further back numerically in transition, makes things an awful lot busier. It's fine if you're up in the lead and, you know, the likes of McCulloch, they go straight down to number 2, number 1 box. Bob's your uncle, and by the time anybody else has come through, you're probably straight out. Relatively unimpeded. It's those in around about the 20s, the 30s that will have athletes going through in front of them, blocking their way out, and athletes coming around past them, blocking their way out and on their way in as well.
Yeah, that positioning will become really important. And I can see Dylan McCulloch, I think, was having a word to Panagiotis Batatas there, so I don't know if they're perhaps planning something with regards to a little bit of break in the last few laps.
Batatas hasn't actually competed in an event since May. His 2023 calendar was an awesome string of World Cup finishes, round about top 10s, and of course had the 4th place here last year. Will have been something on his mind to put himself in a medal contention once again. If he can work with McCulloch, it's not a bad ally to have in this front group of those two trying to push a tempo and put themselves in a medal position.
Yeah, we saw Robin Drayling in the women's race. She tried to make a break for it, I think, with 1 or 2 laps to go. That was shut down. But yeah, Batatas, really strong biker. Dylan McCulloch really strong on the bike. So yeah, let's see if there's any fireworks come these last 2 laps.
This is going to be the start of that penultimate lap. Weaving their way around.
Henry Graf made a break in the Rome World Cup as well not too long ago. He made a break in the last part of the bike, had a sizable gap heading onto the run. Finished 4th in that race, but set himself up for a really strong performance there.
McCulloch just nestling himself at the back from the time being. 18 seconds the gap now between the leading group and the chasing group. Another 2 seconds gone on that last bike split, so they're inside the 20-second mark, which will please those, and they've got 4 more splits to get some more time checks and to take away another 4 seconds, and it suddenly becomes a 4-second gap. So often we see this as well on the World Triathlon stage. We see a group of maybe 10 or so, sometimes a smaller group than that, like 4 or 5. They'll have half of the bike where they'll be out on their own and working hard together. By the end, it all just ends up uniting right at the end of the bike.
Yeah, like I think I said to you, Ollie, the sport, you know, changes. Different years bring about different, you know, scenarios. The men's racing, I would say, a few years ago was really conducive to a small breakaway. We had some really strong, aggressive swim bikers. We know what the Brownlee brothers did, you know, with regards to the sport. Yeah, now it just seems to be a little bit more, we've got really strong bikers like Hayden Wild, Alex Yee, and yeah, the packs do seem to come together a little bit more. Yeah, but I think it just ebbs and flows, it changes as the different years go on.
Yeah, it very much means that if you're in a good running contention going into the weekend, as long as you can stay in a top 25 spot or so, there's a good chance that you'll be right up there come the end of the last few kilometers of the run, to be able to put yourself in a position to compete for top 10s, top 5s, etc. Another short climb up the hill just takes away a little bit of energy. We've seen a few athletes just getting out of the saddle every so often to be able to stick with everyone else. This group is now going to
they're right on
join.
They're right on this group now.
Probably only about a 10-second gap or so, if that. Credit again to that chasing group. They've had to work hard. I think they've probably shared it a little more than the ladies did earlier today.
Yeah, there has been a lot of rotation there. We've seen Ben Cumberland, Great Britain, John Reed, Sebastian Vernison. They've all done a lot of work in that chase group. And John Reed now will be licking his lips knowing that he's right towards the pointy end of this race.
You see Reed just going through there. A couple of athletes getting a touch wide before they get back inside that cone on the right-hand side of the road there. And there's going to be a few in that chase group that'll be very thankful to those that have put in that hard work. Set to come through around about the midpoint of this 7th lap in just a moment. Once again, the timing chart's out on the side of the road. Don't think you need to let anybody in that lead group know that they've been caught by the chasing group. That is going to be fairly self-evident in a few moments' time. Just have to make sure our motorbike cameras get out of the way as well, because it's going to be pretty busy on the road surface.
Yeah, and if that is the case, it's going to be pretty much a carbon copy of the women's race.
"11 seconds now. Barely anything, particularly when it's so strung out like that. I said it looked about a 10 or 11 second gap.
You can almost see the pressure coming off the pedals there with this lead group. It's almost they've resigned themselves to the fact that that group's now upon them.
There'll be some that won't be too happy about handing in the resignation on this bike effort. But that's the way that this is seemingly going to play out, as you say, much like in the women's race earlier. It's a top 24 or so here in the men's under 23 World Championship that is going to tussle it out then, going out onto the run. Still a bit of ground to be made up. You can already see there's a fair bit of coasting and not exactly the same amount of drive as we saw maybe at the start of this bike.
Yeah,
That's,
so
Henry Graff, I think, just at the front trying to change that a little. He's just pulling himself away a touch, trying to spread this group out again. So there'd be a few that wanted to go and maintain the gap. He's trying to add to it possibly, if possible.
yeah, you can just see it's quite fragmented here. These are the chasers now. They're really having to put the pressure on because the group in front is now, like you say, with Henry Graff on the front. You can just see our leaders going through now. They'll have one more lap left on this 40k bike. No sight of the chasers in shot yet. Time gap was 11 seconds.
Yeah, it may well be round about that. Possibly a touch extended.
Hamish Riley, Dina Bellew, Derby of Hungary.
So the leaders will go through to start the final lap.
Yeah, it looks like that gap was maintained pretty much 11 seconds. Yeah, just as it looked like they were going to catch them, it seemed like there was a bit of pressure that went on the front of the group. Henry Graff decided to push on.
Putting in the hard graft.
Yeah.
Hey, you did it earlier with a pun. I've got to retaliate somewhere, Julian. And this chase group comes down onto the seafront as well.
One of our Spanish athletes now also making a bit of a move.
Betados off the front. Yeah, it's Gonzalez Torres who is leading them through. Betados, Cantera del Campo, Henry Graff, Dylan McCulloch making up the top 5. They're all together now as one, the top 24. 4 seconds from front to back. Gergo Dobby, the rear of the field. Almost happens sometimes without realizing when these groups just merge into one.
Yeah, all of a sudden they come around the corner and it's one group. I mean, we saw it was inevitable that it was about to happen. We just didn't catch it at the moment on camera. You can just see now that's really slow. They've bunched up. You might find that this last lap becomes quite tactical. There'll be a lot of jostling around for position. The athletes won't want to get stuck at the back of this big group as they head into transition.
It almost seems favourable if you're going to go into this group into transition at the rear, almost drifting off a couple of extra seconds just to give yourself a bit more space and breathing room as they all start to congregate in the centre of the road and suddenly move to about 3 or 4 wide, which isn't going to help when it gets to these narrow sections, like just coming up with the bollards you see, just closing the track down to 1 lane of the road here.
No, and you have to keep your wits about you. You know, they nearly finished the bike. Everyone's still on the bike. No one's crashed. Fingers crossed. So it's one big group now. It's important to remain focused. Don't lose concentration, you know, thinking ahead too much to the run. You see our Kiwis on the front there. It was both out. James Corbett and Dylan McCulloch there at the front of the group.
Yeah, and I would imagine that Dylan McCulloch is going to be staying there for as long as possible, and as long as he allows himself to. I think he wants to try and control the ending of this bike to make sure he's in the best possible position. Again, he might just try and string them out a touch when we get to the latter part of this final lap. He's still in this group as well, the man that led the swim and has done well out on the front, along with McCulloch and co.
See, they've become a bit more strung out now after going around that 180-degree turn.
So make their way down to this left-hand turn. Then they'll make two more 90-degree left turns to almost come back on themselves slightly before elongated 180-degree turn that takes them on the Avenida Gardner. And then they'll have the weave around the roundabout that we've seen before bending back down towards the sea, cutting back inside, back out, and then down once more to the seafront. It all gets highly convoluted in terms of keeping track of where you are on the course.
Yeah, really strung out now. I wouldn't be surprised if McCulloch and his countryman James Corbett try and put a bit of pressure on this last part of the bike.
This is the roundabout that they'll weave around the other side of, almost chicaning, snaking their way through, but it provides another 90-degree turn here for them. This, the second to last, really slow section, you'd imagine. It's another one of these elongated 90-degree turns that they will go through.
Just a little bit of a gap there. Someone's gone off the front a little bit there.
I just wonder if that's McCulloch in the dark tri-suit who's going to be pushing the tempo. Betados is retaliating as well out at the front. Those two starting to push away from everybody else. There's a few others coming. Is that Day as well, the British athlete who stayed out there at the front?
We did see Betados and McCulloch have a little chat to each other, and this is potentially what that little chat was about, a plan to make a bit of a break for it. It looks like someone's dangling between the two groups. Yeah, the problem is if that person brings the rest of the pack back up to those two.
Which it looks like it might be happening. Betados with a look over the shoulder. McCulloch, Corbett, Betados, the front three going through the last time split. Everybody's sticking with those lead two. What it does is at least puts Betados and I think McCulloch in the prime position seats as they bend their way down. Back along before they'll come back along the other side of the road, basically, on that far side of this stretch.
Yeah, and they're running out of time a bit now for any significant gaps. There's a bit of a break here. This has broken up quite a bit, so maybe it has fractured the group somewhat.
Yeah, it's just been able to break it up in the middle a touch just to provide an extra bit of breathing room and separation going into transition. It may well have worked in terms of the long game. It's not given them a completely clear gap from the rest, although there are now four that are working to pull themselves away from the others, although there's three more in contention just trailing off them, looking to bring them back in. 4 quickly becomes 7 and quickly becomes the rest of the field. But it's those on the back that have been dropped off, maybe 3 or 4 athletes there.
Yeah, Hamish Riley of Great Britain just dangling off the back here. So he was in that chase group, would have had to do a lot of work trying to get into that pack, so his legs are probably pretty done. Just see how the group was fractured.
There'll be another charge from those at the front before we get to this end of the bike. This is where they make their way down towards the seafront. All the way down Avellaneda La Riviera. The trail just bunching up slightly at almost the top of the snake's head, if you will.
Yeah, and even if it hasn't got rid of the whole group, you know, they've put themselves in a enviable position with regards to coming into T2.
Particularly Bitados, one of those wearing the number 27, who's going to be slightly further back, and he could do with that bit of separation and space. And there is another drive off the front. McCulloch looking behind to see if Bitados is coming once again. But others are joining, and they also want to get up at the front as they make their way towards the blue carpet and into transition. A lot of hustle and bustle going on then between the leaders. Bitados getting a little bit wide and almost knocking somebody just on the inside of that final turn as they come into transition. Graf and Elg have done really well then to get themselves up into the top four. McCulloch and Bitados were the ones making that push. Marcus Day still right up there with the leaders as well, coming into transition in fifth. Vernison up there after the hard graft to get himself and the rest of the group up with the leaders up into sixth place. Cantera del Campo in seventh, Sorokin in eighth, Cumberland in ninth, and Retere in 10th. Into transition, coming out of transition, it's the German Graf that leads them. Robin Elg from Hong Kong, second out into the run. Cantera del Campo up into third. Vernison, McCulloch, Coltman, Cumberland, Bitados got caught up slightly, dropping 4 points down to eighth. Marcus Day in ninth, Sorokin making up the top 10. And straight away, David Cantera del Campo wants to lead on this run.
We know that he's in great run shape with that first in Valencia a few weeks ago. He's had a great year, fourth in Samarkand, fifth in Hong Kong. So he will be wanting to perform at home here today. He's taken this first lap out of the run pretty hard.
Driving from the word go, 4 laps then of the 2.5 kilometre circuit. Up and down the highway, all that's needed. Chance to take on some hydration as well. There'll be a couple of gel packs perhaps stuffed into those tri-suits too, but look at the gap that the Spaniard is starting to cultivate for himself. Only one question, Gillian. Too soon, too early, or an attainable pace?
He's a fast runner, Ollie. Hopefully he hasn't got himself too excited too early. You know, he's racing at home. It's a World Championships. He knows he's in great shape. So, yeah, you know, hopefully for him, hasn't gone too hard too soon. He is a great runner, like I've said before. So, yeah, let's see what happens. Hopefully no implosions.
Bitados looking to stay with him. Bitados is chasing down that figure in front. Hard to miss, really, in those Spanish tri-suits, aren't they? It's almost bright pink rather than the yellow and red. Rojas y amarillo. Bitados keeping a watchful eye on the man in front and maybe just starting to close that gap slightly. He's done well, the Greek, as well, because he was stuck down, as we can see there, the transition 2 times going across the screen, down in 8th in the gaggle of bodies, and he's immediately found some separation and looks fairly cool and calm. We haven't seen a close-up yet of our leader.
No, and like you said, he's taken a bit of a break. He hasn't raced for a little while. He raced a lot trying to qualify for the Paris Olympics, just fell short. You know, his campaign, he only started chasing Olympic qualification quite late. So he was probably exhausted after all of that traveling and racing, took a little bit of a time out and has obviously done a great training block, has focused on this race. Yes, started this run pretty strongly. Let's see if he can continue at that pace.
Getting up towards the turn then. Be really interesting to see what the gap is on this first split between Bitados and Del Campo. It looked like it was going to be a huge gap that the Spanish athlete was creating for himself, but yeah, certainly Bitados has done a really good job of not letting this man get out of sight down the road.
Yeah, just having a look at his Samarkand result where he was 4th. He had the fastest run by nearly a minute. So that race was a 10K race. Valencia was a 5K, but just to give you an idea, he ran nearly a minute faster than anyone else over 10Ks in that World Cup event.
15 seconds separating the top 10. John Reed 10th, Henry Graf 9th. Pelayo Gonzalez Torres, the other Spaniard, up in the top 10, down in 8th at the moment. Jules Retere, the Frenchman, in 7th. Mitch Coltman, the Dutchman, in 6th. Dylan McCulloch in 5th. Andre Book in 4th. Gergely Kiss 3rd. Pangios Bitados in 2nd. And David Cantera del Campo in 1st. The gap, 4 seconds between first and second.
Gergely Kiss sitting a further 6 seconds back in third, with quite a big group around him of about 5 or 6 athletes running there.
I think Cantera del Campo is extending the lead slightly as well. Naked eye, gap could be up to around about 5 or 6 seconds now.
Yeah, the overhead shot, you can see that's a massive gap that he's got at the moment.
Yeah, there's no sign of the Greek athlete right now. Well, if it stays at this sort of gap, he's going to win at an absolute canter, David Cantera del Campo. It won't feel like that at all.
Full of the puns again, Ollie. Yeah, Batatas hanging strong there in second at the moment. So chasing from behind, we've got Gergely Kiss, Andre Book, Dylan McCulloch, Mitch Coltman, Jules Retheret, and Peleo Gonzalez Torres, our second Spanish athlete.
That gap is widening. Look how far back the drone cam has had to drop back to be able to pick up Bitados.
Yeah, that's probably about 8 or 9 seconds now, if you're counting from the naked eye.
Giotis Bitados can only see what looks like a monstrous first lap of this run from David Cantera del Campo.
Looking behind him to see if anyone's around. There's daylight between him and Batatas at the moment.
Just needs to pretend he's in Valencia again. Two-time victor in Valencia in 23 and 24. Just keep that focus and that cadence ticking over in terms of the legs. This is the battle far further back away from David Cantera del Campo. Those tussling for maybe getting themselves onto the podium in third place at the moment. If Bitados and the leader have gone out and are able to stay out as far adrift of everybody else as they are. It's a long way to go yet on this run. But you can't argue that this is an impressive start and an impressive first quarter or so of the 10K from the Spaniard.
Finished 12th in Pontevedra in the grand final last year, but he didn't make the front pack of the bike there. He ran himself through to 12th. And again, similarly to Samarkand, he had the fastest run by almost a minute over 10K. So that just gives you an idea of his run pedigree. So I think this man is very, very difficult to beat if he's in the lead come, you know, the run.
Keep everything neat and tidy. Great work by the stewards there just to make sure that the right route is taken. Definitely have seen that happen before when athletes have taken the wrong way down the blue carpet and have had to go back or have been put in a penalty box for doing so. And it has caused drama, certainly at some World Cup events last year that you and I were covering, Chilean. And yeah, David Cantera del Campo does not want to throw this one away. 10-second now he leads ahead of Pangiotis Bitados. Then there's a 22-second gap between the leader and Andre Book, Gergely Kiss, Dylan McCulloch, Jules Retheret, Jonathan Reed, Henry Graff, and Peleo Gonzalez Torres. 9th down to 3rd, separated by just 3 seconds in the battle for the podium. Bitados needs to hold on and maintain his pace, as does Cantera del Campo, for those two to be able to lock up the top two on the podium in quite a comfortable fashion.
Passing one of our back markers here, Densa, I think, of Slovenia. Taking on some fluid, water over the head.
All looks very steady, unlike further back where you see the Frenchman Jules Retheret tussling it out with the likes of Graff and co. This is the group that are fighting for 3rd at the moment. Those handing out water need to make sure they first dish it out, but also almost get out of the way of the athletes down there. It's very tight and congested when you get 4 or 5 athletes in one position and they've got other athletes coming the other way on the opposite side of the road. There's not much room to maneuver in. Plenty of room for this man out in front.
Yeah, absolutely flying, isn't he?
This is outrageous. And it's been from the word go. I've had a lap and a half now of the 4 from this man, and There's not been a change in gait whatsoever. Pitados can only watch as he sails down the road. It's almost out of sight.
Yeah, but Pitados still looking strong. He's focused himself on middle distance racing this year, so he's had some wins over 70.3 races. Decided to move away a little bit from the Olympic distance after he didn't qualify for the Paris Olympics. Had some great success over that middle distance racing. Obviously got some real strength in the legs here because he's running really, really strongly. Around 10 seconds or so, we think, behind David Quintero del Campo at the last time check.
Robin L just quickly has suffered a penalty for equipment in T2, which is going to be a killer for his race that was going so well up until transition and the first part of the run. Canadian Berlioz as well has apparently looked like he cramped up going out of transition and has lost some ground, but he is at least walking and moving down there okay as Pitados continues his push. A look over the shoulder of the Greek athlete. Look out in front. He's almost leading the back markers now, Del Campo. No stopping him whatsoever. As he gets up to the midway point of this second lap, we'll get to see what the splits look like. You can see, though, exactly what it looks like. There's a blue figure in the far distance as Quintero del Campo rounds the 180-degree turn, and Pitados is nowhere near him.
Yeah, just navigating some traffic as they head around this cone. The crowd's really starting to come out now. Got one of their athletes in the front leading this World Championship race.
17 seconds, the gap between the Spaniard and the Greek. Ancient times, the Greeks were able to topple anything that came in front of them. I don't think Pitados is going to be able to match that and topple the 17-second gap between he and the leader. It's 36 seconds now between the rest of the field. And at least Pitados can look back and see a 20-second gap between he and John Reed, the American, with just a second separating Reed, McCulloch, Rethere, Buck, Kiss and Graf. Mitch Coltman just dropping back 9th place for the Dutchman as he's 54 seconds adrift of the leader.
Yeah, the battle for bronze really, really hotting up now.
Well, unless there's anything dramatic out of the front, we might as well focus there as well and see what's happening with the jockeying for position. I know we won't, because certainly the home fans want to see this man as much as possible just racing away on this run. But barring some sort of major disaster, no one's going to touch him.
Yeah, incredible. He's making it look easy, isn't he? I think with David Quintero del Campo, if he makes that front pack in a race, you know, he's fairly unbeatable when it comes to the run. He's laying it all out there today. Pitados looking really, really strong.
And look, no doubt for Pitados, the aim would have been to win, but the aim would have certainly have been to find himself on the podium after finishing 4th last time out in the Under-23 World Championships. If he can keep this going and maintain that gap or even increase it over John Reed, and there may be a case as well that Pitados has got enough space between everybody else that's back there fighting for 3rd that they may get caught up in their own tussle rather than thinking about worrying and putting some pressure on the Greek. But a 2nd place finish will be still fantastic for Pitados, so I'm sure we'll be elated with it. And unlike earlier in the women's race, it's tough, I imagine, to finish 2nd and not be happy when you see exactly what's happened there further ahead of you. And David Quintero del Campo is romping away with it. You just know that you can't compete with this sort of running pace on the day. It doesn't look like anybody's going to come close to being able to compete with it.
Yeah, he's looking absolutely fabulous. And Pitados, I think, you know, he'll be happy sitting in 2nd at the moment. If you look across his 3 disciplines, I would say historically his run has been his weakness. Having done those middle distance racing, focusing away from World Triathlon racing, you know, it looks like he's gained some strength. You know, you can just see the chasers there behind. It's so hard to tell from the camera angle. The gap was 20 seconds. We do still have quite a long way to go on this run, so, you know, it's not a given.
Yeah, 20 seconds can get eaten up if somebody wants to make a push, but it's really difficult to see a dramatic change coming the way it stands right now.
And we have 6 athletes chasing. John Reed, Dylan McCulloch, Jules Rethere, Andre Buck, Gergely Kiss, and Henry Graf. Those are chasers. Those are the athletes chasing that bronze medal.
Well, Del Campo continues the charge. Bitados looks to come back as well. Bitados only needs to look back and know he's got time and space. He's struggling just slightly further ahead of Cantero Del Campo in terms of the back markers. Need to ensure they stay well out of the way here. Halfway through the 10K run. He said he makes it look easy. There's no grimace, there's no strain, there's just a consistency that's almost terrifying to watch, that someone could look so comfortable after an hour and a half of pure endurance.
Absolutely flying through this run.
24 seconds now the lead. He's added another 7 seconds to the advantage over Bitados.
Bitados had 20 seconds buffer between himself and those men chasing from behind. We'll get a look and see what that time gap is. 22 seconds, so he's holding tough there, isn't he?
Yeah, he's maintaining and keeping it, and that's all he will want to see now. There's very little sign of the chasing pack behind 8th place Henry Graff. There is John Reid, excuse me, Mitch Coltman even, who's gone through up in 9th place now, the Dutchman. Confirmation of that 45-second gap between 3rd place and 1st place.
So Panagiotis Bitados of Greece. I wonder whether Greece has ever won a World Triathlon Championship
I don't believe
medal.
so.
No.
Maybe back in, you know, AD 342, back in the ancient times, they probably dominated it. The founders of the Olympic Games, of course, back in the day. A nation synonymous with success in their ancient history. Track and field events. Struggling to find a bike, I imagine, in ancient Athens to be able to compete in the triathlon. But certainly Bitados, considering the success that we've seen him have over the last 18 months, he is a candidate to put himself right up there in the equation over the next few years, going into the elite races as well. Still got a couple of years at the under-23 level too to add more medals around his neck if he wants to. Today though, he's just being outclassed by David Cantero Del Campo. This running field is stretched out to say the least.
Back with David Cantero Del Campo.
I mean, we might be talking to him before 3rd place has even been decided. He's going to finish this so quickly.
Just looks so smooth, doesn't he?
This will wrap up what's been a very impressive few weeks on home soil for this man. You know, he's had some top 5 finish in World Cup events this year, including the win in Valencia. He had that 2nd place last year in Tangier in the World Cup events. Wasn't really on our horizons in terms of last year's under-23 World Championships, and that 12th place finish was impressive, but may not have been exactly hogging the headlines compared to the rest of the field and what we saw a year ago. He's the headline maker today. Lap and a half remaining. May have fancied putting himself in the elite race, considering how he's performed today so far. 26 seconds separating he and Bitados. The gap just maintaining. Coming down slightly.
Yeah, 26 seconds. We'll get a time check to the chase group. The last check, there was still 6 of those athletes jostling for that bronze medal position.
Here are the chase group. Bitados has got another 10 seconds or so ahead of Retorek, because it's 54 seconds back they are now. Gergely Kiss, Retorek, Henry Graff, Andre Book, Dylan McCulloch, John Reid. A second separating them, 1 second deciding 3rd place.
Cantera Del Campo, meanwhile, out front with a massive lead.
He's beating the cyclists on the side of the road with this run tempo. Looks like that Henry Graf's put himself at the front of this group that are fighting it out for third.
Yeah, they're now strung out single file. It looks like Henry Graf just putting the pressure on a little bit there. They were bunched across the road before they hit that dead turn.
Hamish Riley having to drop out DNF for the British athlete, unfortunately.
Pity after his third place back in 2022.
No more medals to add to his collection. It's one that's going to match at least the lower half of the tri-suit for Cantera Del Campo. This is the battle for third that we might want to jump to straight away after we see the Spaniard cross the finishing line in about a lap and a quarter's time. Lap 3 of 4 almost in the books as the Frenchman Retheret starting to make a push ahead of them, and he's suddenly finding the juice to kick into gear. And he's leaving them behind suddenly, and this could be a strung out podium indeed if the Frenchman can maintain this.
Yeah, he doesn't want to leave it down to a sprint finish. He's decided to make his move now. Just a lap and a bit to go on the run. An 18th in Valencia at the World Cup there not too long ago. He had a podium in a European Cup in Cole not too long ago as well. So the young Frenchman.
About the only people that are going to be able to run with Cantera Del Campo are those back markers that he continues to lap and knock out of the equation. Going past Zakaria Chitiwi, I believe there, the Tunisian athlete.
Yeah, so he'll navigate this technical part of the course, as technical as it gets. He'll make a bit of a 180-degree turn, head back past the finish line and onto his last lap. 2.5 Ks to go on the run.
Still no change. Still no sign of weakness. I think that's a word that just isn't in the equation right now for this man. One more lap to go. Applause down the blue carpet on this section for the last time. There'll be much warmer applause when he goes down it for the final time on the other side of those railings away to the left. There's a time to take in some of the cheers from the crowd even at the start of his final lap. That's the confidence that's emanating from this man as he goes through. Pitados 28 seconds behind. It's gone up by a couple of seconds since the last time we touched it. Here he is, the Greek. Warmly appreciated his efforts. No trouble about what's behind him. Not at the moment.
He had 26 odd seconds.
Gergely Kiss, the Hungarian. We've missed something further back. The man is now in third, 54 seconds. He's been able to catch up with Retheret and get 5 seconds ahead of him. Henry Graf, John Reed, Andre Butt struggling there. Dylan McCulloch's dropping back as well. 106 behind the leader. There's about 5 seconds separating 5th and 8th, which is Graf, Reed, Buck and McCulloch. But Gergely Kiss, the Hungarian, trying to pick up another medal there. You see him there going through for Hungary today. Retheret just looks like he's struggling after making that push. Graf's right back with him as well. Now the question is, has Kiss gone too early? And will others be able to retaliate behind him? The top 8, though, are the outstanding 8 in this field right now. There are a top 2 that are outstanding above everybody else, and David Cantera Del Campo is almost literally streets ahead of everybody else. That's Gergely Kiss in our picture right now, the man who is currently in a bronze medal position to start the final lap of 4.
Yeah, and he'll be buoyed by the performance of his countrywoman, Carolina Horvath, taking that women's title early on today. Fabulous performance by her. So, yeah, you'll want to get another medal for Hungary here. So 5 seconds he's got to Jules Retheret chasing from behind, who is running with Henry Graf of Germany and John Reed of the USA.
It's a big drop off then, about 50 seconds or so. Mitch Coltman and Dylan McCulloch 8th and 9th. Pavel Sorokin makes up the top 10 right now. He's going to fight for it with the British athletes Ben Cumberland, Marcus Day. You'll just run out of superlatives if you talk too much about the man who's leading this one right now.
Yeah, almost 30 seconds now, David Cantero del Campo. That's a massive lead. Going to make his way down towards the turn point, and then he'll have 1.25 kilometers or so between himself and a World Under-23 Championship title here in Torremolinos.
Take in the praise, take in the moment, young man. The chance to excel above everybody else on home soil comes so few and far between for so many athletes. You can just see in the background there the Spanish athlete getting ready for that last turn before he'll grind all the way back home. And he'll go past this man on the other side of the road as Pitados will watch a gold medal race away. The Spaniard makes the turn. Takes the water as well. Pitados gets set to cross as the two go past each other, first and second. This will be a great moment for Pitados as well, because he'll get to look and turn and see the space behind him and know that in around about 1.5 kilometers or so, things are going to be looking very pretty indeed for the Greek in terms of picking up a silver medal.
"28 seconds the time gap at the last check, and Kiss here.
He'll have a look and he'll see a gap himself, Gergely Kiss. 57 seconds off the leader, 30 seconds off Pitados, but importantly, over 10 seconds ahead of Henry Graf, the German, with Rettere, the Frenchman, Andre Buck, John Reed making up the top 7. Dylan McCulloch just falling away from that group now. He's around about 7 seconds away from the American first and second. McCulloch and Reed in terms of the start sheet, 8th and 7th respectively at the moment on the finishers sheet, with half a lap to go.
Cantero now heading towards transition, towards the crowds. Pitados a little glance behind. Nothing to see.
Who's brought the Spanish flag for the leader? Someone's got to hand it to him, surely, going down the home straight. It's got to be tucked away somewhere. He could afford a 15-second time penalty if he's got it stored away in any of his kit at all. Hopefully there's the sparkling cava as well, rather than champagne for him to celebrate with. It's going to be a very good afternoon on the beach, I imagine, for David Cantero del Campo. There'll be a fair bit of media to be doing after he crosses the finish line, but it is inevitability right now. The grandstand is just coming to his left. He's able to give some high fives down the road as well. Getting urged on by plenty of the home supporters here. This is a moment I'm sure he'd love to just walk it rather than race through it. There's the Spanish flag on the side if he's going to take one.
Yeah, and he can really just enjoy this last part of the run, can't he? Soak it all in.
Pitados well behind, but well ahead in second, and Gergely Kiss in third. Still potential for some drama in the battle for that bronze medal spot. There is surely no drama whatsoever, though, on the horizon for this man. A left turn to make. And nothing but blue ahead of him. And blue is going to lead to gold. Unstoppable, outrageous, and immensely impressive on his charge over the 10-kilometer run. There is no doubt he is a worthy winner, and he will continue to take the adulation of the supporters all the way through, almost dancing across the finish line. Home is where the heart is for the Spaniard. David Cantero del Campo, the under-23 men's world champion 2024. He does it on home soil and sea and sand of Andalusia, and Torremolinos will be a venue that will be etched in his heart forever, much like Valencia with his World Cup victory. And what a wonderful finish to the 2024 season for the Spaniard. In hot pursuit, but struggling to stay with the winner, Pangiotis Bitaros, a superb finish for him to come second and get himself on the podium after missing out 12 months ago in this event. And Cantero looks like he's barely broken a sweat down there after the finish line. And it's another medal for Hungary as well, as Gergely Kiss is going to hold on for that third place. A third place finish that was certainly up in the air for a large part of the run. But the Hungarian made the push right before the start of the fourth and final lap. And it's another superb afternoon for Team Hungary. It's coming through in force, Jules Retheret. And Henry Graf makes up the top five, the German. John Reed will finish sixth in the end. There was much that he had hoped for, and Andre Buch celebrating a top 10 finish there in seventh, the Chilean. Really pleased with his own personal afternoon here in Torremolinos. Dylan McCulloch, what could have been, put himself in a great position in the swim and on the bike, but the run just was never there for him in the end. As he will finish inside the top 10 at least, but it's just an 8th place finish for him in the end. And there was really a golfing class between the top 8 and everybody else, but everybody was just standing, watching in astonishment at what David Cantero del Campo has been able to do out on that run.
Yeah, incredible run by the Spaniards. 34 seconds the gap at the end between him and Panagiotis Batadas. He did also take a few seconds to celebrate as well. So
I was going to say, it's probably about 40 seconds, isn't it?
I think as we see, I think this is Mitch Coltman coming in 9th place.
Yeah, the Dutchman will take a top 10 finish.
And Sorokin of the independent neutral athletes rounding out the top 10.
I'm sure Coltman will be fairly happy to have at least, if you start in that top 10, you want to at least finish in that top 10. He's improved on his start number by one position. Pavel Sorokin has improved on his start number by an almighty position. He was another one who's been up there around the front for a large part of it, but the run just not there. See as well Ben Cumberland and Marcus Day, and what a performance from Marcus Day. Led the swim, led the bike, finishing in the top 15. More than impressive achievement for him.
Bernison of Norway in 13th, Jan Diener of Germany in 14th.
Well,
David, congratulations.
20 come through. Let's get down with our winner.
Detonated that run. It looked cool, calm, collected. Was there any moment where you were worried how fast you'd set out?
Yeah. So I see the other guys were going fast, but I just go at my pace. I felt good, and I just try to left them back as fast as possible, and just keep that pace, and just try to get the win. But from the beginning of the race, I felt really nice from the swim. I was on the lead group, and that was nice for me. And then trying to keep a good bike and just run, it was just gave all and try to win.
Because it's a long, relentless run course out there, straight up and back. The crowds must have kept you going through that.
Yeah. So I hope, at the beginning, I thought that if I get out of the water from the chase pack, it will be hard to win. but from the beginning, I see myself on the with the big ones on the water, and I just trust on me and try to keep them.
Spanish triathlon's produced some brilliant champions over the years. You're joining some glittering names out there.
Yeah, now Javi, Mario, Fernando leave back a really nice podiums, winnings, and it will be hard to do the same. I think it will be impossible, but we will try to be as good as they were.
What does it mean to you at the end of this year, doing this at home, becoming under-23 world champion, putting all that hard work together?
This year, at the beginning, was not easy. I couldn't go at the Olympics, and then I just had an injury. I tried to get recovered as fast as I could, and then we had a really nice second part of the season with the Valencia World Cup and the 23 World Champs, and it's nice to stay in the highest positions again.
Some big showings at home. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, you too.
Panagiotis, congratulations. Silver here at the under-23 World Champs. When you came in here, you were presumably targeting that podium, but it was a tough field.
Yeah, I am super happy for my results. I push everything, I take everything from my body, so I'm really happy for this. For today, it was an amazing day for me, and amazing race, and amazing organization here. Everything was amazing.
Some longer distance experience recently, success there. Did that help inform the way you attacked that run?
It was just to push myself, and then I felt I just, after some kilometers, I tried to control, just to do the best for a 10K, and then that's it, I finished second.
As David kind of drew further and further away, I guess you were just trying to keep him as close as possible for as long as possible, and then keep a real eye on who was behind as well.
I tried to keep it close, but this guy is amazing, he ran amazing, so congratulations for him for the first place, so yeah.
And a word for the crowds out there lining the course, keeping it all going in the sunshine here in Torremolinos. It's been a good day.
Yeah, it's an amazing day, amazing weather. Congratulations to World Triathlon and all for the volunteers.
Pretty amazing, Podium.
Thank you very much.
Gerge, well done. Bronze out here on a tough race. You made it count at the end. There was a big pack of you, and it was time to roll the dice.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was one of the most difficult races for my career because I started bad swimming for me and struggled on the bike in the first few laps, but finally we catch the first group, so I managed to start the run in the front and try to stay focused to the finish line, and yeah.
It was unusual not to see you first out of the water. Did that speak to just the quality of field out there, really?
Yeah, there are lots of very good swimmers, and that was quite okay swim for me, but not the best.
How was the bike pack working out there? You were, formed part of that lead pack, and then the big group came together. The pace really came off over that last lap.
Yeah, there are a few, for example, Werner Zem for Norwegia and John Reed from the USA. They pushed really hard on the bike, and finally we catch the group.
So yeah, a great race out here. You were flying the Tizil Varas flag as you came down the finish chute there. Just speak to like what that hometown does for triathlon in Hungary.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't win, but I catch the flag, and it was a very amazing feeling to hold the Hungarian flag with the Tizil Varas sign on that. So yeah, it's crazy.
Under 23 World Champs bronze. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Well, superb from Gerlikis, superb from Banchiotis Spitados, but magnificent from David Cantera del Campo.
Yeah, absolutely incredible racing, and I think just really special for him to do it at home on Spanish soil. He mentioned Javier Gomez, Mario Mola as his, idols. Saying he couldn't even imagine doing what they've done, but yeah, he's setting himself really up really well for a fantastic career for a young Spanish athlete.
Yeah, they're not bad idols to try and emulate, that's for sure. What I'd be very interested in seeing is later on this weekend how his run time compares to anybody else out on this course over the next few days or so. He'd been able to have a few more handshakes, and yeah, he was skipping and almost dancing down the blue carpet by the end of it. I mean, he's had time to do whatever he wanted, really. Could have waltzed his way down the last 20 meters of the blue surface. Pitados, well, that is superb to get himself on the podium. I said he'd be happy with that, and my goodness, he was beaming almost from ear to ear in the end. And then Goli Kiss, another medal for the Hungarian contingent today. Confirmation then of the Under-23 World Championship men's standings. Cantero Del Campo first, Pitados second, Kiss third. Rethare made that push, but made it a touch too early in the end. The Frenchman settles for fourth. Henry Graff grafting hard to come in fifth. John Reed, Andre Book, Dylan McCulloch, Kolkman making up the top 9 or so on what was a very competitive top 9, and then everybody else a bit further away. Marcus Day, impressive from him. Sebastian Wernerson as well tried to pull that group back in on the bike, but didn't have it on the run to be able to compete further up the field in the end. Alan Hobel will expect for more next time out. He'll be frustrated, I imagine, with a 21st place position finish on that one. Robin Elg as well, who had that 15-second time penalty that was added to his race, but he was never really in contention by the end of it. 5 minutes adrift of the leader. Julian Burkel of South Africa making up the 31st spot. What is a very busy field today, around about 69 athletes or so competing in the Under-23 Men's World Championships. 46 of them so far have crossed the finishing line, and there is the official finishing 46 for you. Well, needless to say, it's going to be party time in Andalusia for some of these athletes, particularly those that get to stand on top of the podium. David Cantero Del Campo will be happy to take in the whole of this afternoon's adventure again and again. It was a group of around about 24 athletes or so that came into transition in the end. T2. We certainly expect to see a bit more from that man, Dylan McCulloch. The German Graf is getting them out on their way, but look at Del Campo already making a charge through the middle of the field. He and Pitados set the pace early, but Pitados unable to stay with Del Campo, who by the first quarter of that first lap of the run was well ahead of everybody else, and a 6-second gap became a 10-second gap, which became a 24-second gap very quickly. And all you had to do was watch this man sail away to the horizon. Pitados in the background for some of the run, but not for much of it at all. The battle for third was certainly heating up further back. Goli Kiss, Jules Rethare, Henry Graff, John Reed, Dylan McCulloch all in the exchanges as they tussled it out further back in the field. But as lap 3 started, Goli Kiss leading the group through in the last spot for the podium. No one anywhere near Cantero Del Campo. Pitados with around about 25 seconds worth of breathing room. You can see him in the blue tri-suit far in the background now, as the leader rounded the midway point of that third lap. And the pace was strong, the tempo was strong. And even at this point, he was starting to take some of the adulation from the crowd as he came down the blue carpet, in this section of the blue carpet. Making mincemeat of the back markers. David Cantero Del Campo getting some last sights of those that were trailing in his wake. Rethare leading the battle for third at that point, and he would try and make a push. As with the German, Henry Graff. Nobody could shake anybody else, but this was when the Frenchman kicked, and he fancied it. There is the leader. praise heaped upon him as he got ready for the final lap of this run course. No one in his vicinity whatsoever. Kegly Kiss would be holding on eventually for the third spot, and we can get down to the podium and see those top three receive their medals. Anthem of Spain. Well, nothing more but the champagne celebrations to begin, and for us to depart from Torremolinos for a brief moment in time. We will have, of course, the Junior World Championships coming back up tomorrow afternoon here on Triathlon.tv, as well as the rest of the action that's taking place across this weekend on the Andalusian coast. A clean photo before the messy aftermath begins, and it's a aftermath I'm sure that will only get messier and messier once the champagne is done with. You know, for these athletes, I'm sure, Gillian, the body's a temple and nothing else will be going into it today.
Not for the last race of the season, Ollie. I think there'll be an element of celebration. See all those Chiringuito beach bars there on the promenade. Plenty of fun to partake in alongside the beach there, I'm sure.
They're going to do some good business, those beach bars, I imagine, over the next few hours or so, particularly in the Spanish camp. What a way to wrap up the Under-23 World Championships for the host nation, and for that man in particular on top of the podium. The best and so much better than all the rest today. David Cantero del Campo walks away from a home race with gold once again. Let's have a look back at how exactly he did it. A swim in the water that for the large part was led by a Brit, Marcus Day. He was the one that set the early pace, although right on his heels as well was the man in the #1 cap, Dylan McCulloch. So he looked to keep himself positioned right towards the front, but Day was superb in being the driving force out through the water in some challenging rather than difficult conditions. He made it look very easy indeed as the leaders came in to transition off the beach and onto the bike. And we wondered if perhaps a powerful front group of maybe 3 or 4 would try and make an early push away on the bike. It certainly looked like we might get some of that, but there was still plenty in hot pursuit, with the top 30 separated only by about 30 seconds or so. And we did wonder if a big enough gap would be created by a leading group of maybe 6. And much as we saw earlier in the day in the women's race, those 6 were caught up by a handful more before they even really got going out there on the bike, and then it was a relative just procession around the streets of Torremolinos. Chasing pack certainly had their eyes on getting themselves into contention as well and catching up with the leaders, and they would do some hard work further back to reduce what was around about a 35-second deficit at almost the midway point out there on the bike. Interesting, you see there, David Cantero del Campo always up and around, but towards the rear of that leading group before they came into T2. A quick changeover, a lot of attention on that man, the New Zealander Dylan McCulloch. Slightly slow out of transition in the end, and it was the German that would lead them out, Graf. Henry Graf wouldn't have that lead for much longer. Look at the Spanish athlete immediately just putting his foot down, and he and the Greek Bitaros making the early going. The going was too tough though for the Greek athlete, and it was the battle for third further back that created a lot of the drama. Thankfully for the Spanish supporters, there was zero drama at the midway point on the run. There wouldn't be any drama at all for that man right at the front of the field, nor for the man in second, Bitaros, who just had to keep his focus and keep his head down. This was the moment when Cantero del Campo would start to celebrate the end of the third lap and going into his final 2.5 kilometer stretch. Bitaros looking back every so often and only seeing Gurgly Kiss a long, long way further down the road. The Hungarian, though, had made his push, battling against Jules Rethorek, as the Frenchman thought he'd been able to kick at the end of lap 2 and into lap 3. Wouldn't be the case. Kiss would hold on in the end for that third place spot after fighting back and getting himself in front. But for David Cantero del Campo, the end of this fourth lap was merely a procession, drinking in the home supporters' adulation and drinking in the champagne at the end of this one as well, with a victory and a gold medal on home soil to his name, as he did in the World Cup in Valencia earlier today. Superb work from the Spaniard. Bitaros second, and a third for the Hungarian Kiss. All making up a superb podium.
Mucha suerte y que... Ya me han cambiado la tarjeta y todo. Sí, la tarjeta ya creo que te la han cambiado.